What's up, rockers? Welcome to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast, where we geek out on all things rock and roll. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Leave us your likes and comments. You can also leave likes and comments on our Facebook page. Follow us on iTunes, Spotify, Instagram at talklouder_podcast. And of course, our website, talklouderpodcast.com, where you'll find links to our merch and all of our previous episodes. I'm Metal Dave Glessner, along with my co-host Jason McMaster. And today we're joined by a couple of friends of the show, just friends, period, way before the show. Sure. We've got Patrick Muzingo and Tim Mosher from Junkyard joining us today. And I guess the timely item is they are on tour or about to go on tour. They're doing their the first Junkyard album in its entirety. And on a string of those dates, original guitarist Chris Gates is joining them. So we've got Pat and Tim here to talk to us today about that.
I think Chris is doing all of them. I think he's doing all of this run.
He might be doing all this run. I know that by the time this episode airs, they'll already be out doing some acoustic shows.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think Chris picks up in March. You can find all that information on junkyardblues.com, their website. But always great to hang out with Tim and Pat. I just feel like, just dudes around a campfire yucking it up, as always, with those guys.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers, and they're perfect guests for the show because they can talk. They can both just go. You just wind them up with a phrase, and they have a story about it. It's if you love rock and roll, especially Junkyard, you're like all ears. Because it's relative, it's historical, and it's usually, it might be immoral or moral depending on what kind of personality you are. But I think that it's always a good time to see those guys. They're a kick-ass live band. Their Rejuvenation a handful of years ago is kind of an amazing story, and it's part of the reason why we're talking to them here. So
yeah, that album they put out in 2017 called High Water is amazing. I listened to that record over and over and over. I love it. I think it stands up right alongside the first two Junkyard records. We talked to them a little bit today about the possibility of a new album. They've got some tracks in the can. I've heard some of them. It's great stuff. So we picked their brains a little bit about what's it going to take to get a new full-length album out. And I'll throw a little bait in the water to use one of Jason's phrases. We got a great story, timely enough, about Gary Rossington from Lynyrd Skynyrd.
Yeah.
I did not know this. I knew Junkyard toured with Lynyrd Skynyrd, but I did not know this story specifically. So you'll definitely want to stay tuned and listen for that because it's hilarious.
Definitely. Sorry to hear about rock and roll lost a warrior in Gary Rossington. I want to bring up an acquaintance. I want to call him a friend. We weren't close, but Jim Durkin from Dark Angel fame passed away yesterday. And I don't have any specifics or information, but really sad for me today. So doing the podcast today and talking to the Junkyard guys kind of made me get out of my sort of funk. But I just want everyone to say a prayer for Jimmy D's family. During the episode, I got a text from Gene Hoglan of Dark Angel, and because I had reached out to him, and their hearts are broken. So,
man. Yeah,
it's terrible. I don't know what's going on. Now, I have some voicemails from Jim because I was wanting to help him with some writing. He was gonna. I think he sent me some song ideas that just didn't grow on the tree, or we didn't have time to pursue. But it's kind of sudden because I feel like it was just a couple of months ago that I was talking to him. So that's crazy. The thrash metal world and the southern rock world have lost some greats just in a mere over the past few days. So this episode will air much after more news will surface. But yeah, so great episode today. Excited to talk to, like you said, our friends.
Yeah.
And have them on the show. And I don't think we had either Pat or Tim on the show yet, had we?
No, we've had David Roach and we've had Chris Gates on the show.
Right. That's right.
And Pat and Tim are long overdue. And I still want to get
Todd and Jimmy.
James.
We can get Todd and James on together like we had Pat and Tim. We can go Dos Amigos. Yeah.
The thing with Junkyard is, as we learned today, and we know this from in being in person, the more the merrier, because it's always a good time and a fun hang. And you're talking about a couple of guys that can lift your spirits if you're in a funk. It's those guys for sure.
Well, and they have stories, and like I said, they're very layered, and when they talk about their friends, their family, their songwriting partners, their touring partners, it's family. When they talk about them, you're just like, wow, their process, because in today's episode, we talk about songwriting with them. We talk about things that hardcore Junkyard fans may or may not even know. So I think it's really a great episode today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Tim and Patrick from Junkyard on the Talk Louder podcast today. What's up, guys?
How are you, Dave?
How much?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thanks for joining us.
It's nice to be here. I'm honored to be here. Actually, I'm very excited to be on this show.
Yeah, we were excited. I was like a big hug to Metal Dave for getting the Junkyard dudes on here.
Yeah.
Who else has done this? Did Tim do this show before?
I've never done it.
David's done it. That's it.
Oh, David. Oh, okay.
I would love to have done. Oh yeah, Chris was first. We did Chris a long time ago. Our first 6 months.
Roach was first. Gates was second.
Oh, okay, right.
So you guys are long overdue, and one of these days we'll get Muscat and Jimmy James as well. But we're happy to have the two of you with us today for sure. Long overdue.
Happy to be here.
And it's timely, of course.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, we don't do things by accident around here.
We have something to talk about.
Yeah.
I've been kind of stalking my next door neighbor. There's no more California plates on his car. I will tell the world.
Wow.
He's got Texas plates on that car.
Wow.
The old Volvo. The old Volvo. Yeah.
I guess he was tired of getting shit. So.
Probably. So he's got the Texas plates on there. Can you tell I'm stalking him much? All I got to do is walk out in the front yard and go.
I mean, you guys share a driveway, probably almost. So I don't know if that's
pretty much. Well, look. Did you see the picture he took of me up on the ladder hanging the Christmas lights?
Yeah, I did.
I guess payback's a bitch.
Yeah.
Right.
But I've been stalking him because of what we're going to talk about today. I've been stalking him and go, well, are they going to practice? Is he going to drive the Volvo out to California? Is he going to fly? He's still here?
He's
not hopping on a Southwest flight.
I'm not trying to get rid of him or anything, but I thought it was kind of funny. I've been waiting for Chris to pull up and park his car in front of my house, get in David's Volvo, and then drive off to I-10.
Parts unknown.
Not going to happen.
So tell us, guys. Tell us, you've got some tour dates coming up, and you've got. I think are you doing the Monsters of Rock cruise this year?
We are, yeah.
Okay, so tell us what's on the itinerary here in the next couple months. I know you've got some dates. You're doing some acoustic stuff, and then you're doing some dates, a run of dates with Chris Gates, which is great. I mean. How did you get that to happen?
Well, that was, I want to say that the ball started rolling. I think David reached out to Chris prior to the last time that we came down to Austin, which was 2020.
Yeah, I think end of 21.
End of 21, right. So
one of those December visits you guys do.
Yeah.
Right.
Not great for weather, but it's,
Great
But,
for
yeah.
us.
Yeah, definitely. So
Sick
yeah,
of the
David
heat.
reached out to Chris to feel him out, and we've thrown the olive branch out to Chris before, and and we totally respect him. When you're ready to come on and jam with us, that would be great. And when David reached out to him, Chris said absolutely. So that kind of got the ball rolling, and just a mere fact of when we did play that show at Austin City Limits that you guys were at, it was a no-brainer after Chris got done with us. It's like, well, this needs to happen more.
It was fun. It was fun. It was great to see him. I hadn't seen him for so long. It's been like 10 years or something.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a long time. We're not teenagers anymore. It's time to just get on with shit,
Well, the cool thing is it's not going to be any secret, and no one's going to go, who the fuck is this guy?
Right.
It's like a serious, it's a serious, like a homecoming. You could put all of those like melancholy or happy face kind of spins on
closing a circle, all those kind of things. Hallmark tropes. Yeah.
Keep everyone on the goddamn stage, and just Lynyrd Skynyrd and Allman Brothers the shit out of that, and punk rock style. And
he came to soundcheck, and we ran through maybe half of the stuff we were going to play in the show. It just felt. Besides, I've been playing with Jimmy for a long time now, but before that, I had played with Chris for a long time. We were together
10 years,
at least on the road. So we fell into each other's. We fell into it very quickly, and as we're older, we're better listeners to each other, and so we know what we're supposed to do. We know what our places are, and it's a little bit lighter lifting for me because Chris can have a lot of his work back, and that's good. And I can do the little bits and bobs, but it was just really nice. And I guess this idea of doing the first album as a piece, like let's do it that had been floated before, but it never seemed to feel right. Like, because, I'm not on the first album. You know what I mean? There was a lot of things like what. And David is like me, is very much like, let's move forward. Yeah. But I thought with Chris, it would be a cool way if we're going to do it, now's the time. Because here's the guy who wrote most of the fucking songs. And so let's do it like how Aerosmith does Toys in the Attic, or whoever does it. Cheap Tricks will do that. They'll do full albums. Punk bands do it all the time. Bad Religion does it,
Yeah.
And it's great. I think it's I like it. And, we do most of it anyway, but to see it as a piece, like we're going to play it the order that you bought the record in, and it's just like the record, and then we'll do a batch of stuff from 6th to 7th and 9th.
For listeners who may be kind of just falling in now, what songs in the set for years past now or that are on the first record are not in a regular Junkyard set?
Can't Hold Back. I don't think Can't Hold Back's been played since the first album tour. Yeah,
Can't Hold Back hasn't been played since since when we went out with you guys in Florida, and we started off in St. Louis. That's the last time I think we played that song.
September '89. I remember it well.
Yeah.
Down the Dark comes in and out. I mean, there are ones that kind of come in and out. Long Way Home comes in and out. Things come in and out. Okay. I mean, there's some pillars from that album that we can't play. We have to play or we don't get out of the building. You know what I mean?
Well,
we have to play blues. We have to play Simplement. We have to play. I mean, there's a bunch, right? We have to do Hands Off, like where people get angry.
Some of us are lucky. You guys are lucky that you have a couple like
it's a miracle. Yeah. It is wonderful. Yeah. I think about it all the time.
That's a good problem to have.
I think so many shows, and we're playing.
Yeah.
He froze.
Did we lose him?
Because it always wins. It always wins. It's like, we're going to get them. This always brings people in. The band seems to lock in on it. We play it great live. It's got a lot of dynamics. It's really like a moment. I know that if things are a little bit like we're trying to, especially if we're opening for someone and trying to win over fans, once we get to Simple Man, we've got that. That's a card that we can pull out of a deck. And I always feel that it's like, whoo, we got that. And, Hollywood, we stick toward the end. So you've kind of run your race at that point. But yeah, we're very lucky. I think, I remember being with, talking to Laura from Little Caesars, like, God, you guys just get to play Simple Man in your set, and it just works. I'm like, I know, it's a fucking blessing, man.
Yeah.
It always makes it work, and it's like it's a real pillar. So I always look at our shows like there's certain songs that are pillars that we have to do. And we've been lucky that we've been able to kind of move those around a bit and even add a little bit. Faded's kind of become one of those songs that people expect us to do, which for us is a kind of a miracle, being a later song and all that. You know, so there's always, we try to move in new stuff, but we also always know. We get a lot of that. You get it too, Jason, I'm sure, like, why don't you play da-da-da-da-da? I'm like, okay, let me explain you how this works. So we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to do this, we got to do that. Probably got to do that, and probably that. Okay, there's 2 songs left that we can.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's just really what it is. And for an hour and 20-minute set, we're not Springsteen. We don't play 3 hours. You know, so
yeah.
So we're very lucky. It's a blessing, and maybe that's what doing this album is like. The first album is an important record. It's seminal. It was of that time. It was a big record. Let's give it its due, like a proper, real approach to it.
Well, how do you guys feel if I may, because I know David has something he wants to jump into, but how does it make you feel when I say that, I'm going off of something you said, Tim, is when I, or just anybody says that record, the first Junkyard, introduced a way to do something that it was not being done. There is a style that you guys are doing that was created that, I mean, sure, there's Raging Slab and Circus of Power, and you could go with the Rhino Buckets and the, whatever, but there was none of that sounds like Junkyard.
It's of a piece, like it's of that. There are bands that are similar, and it was a similar time. So there are certain elements of it that other bands touch on, but there's just a certain unique element that David and Chris brought to it. And then I think the punk thing really sifts through there that people don't really pick up on. The punk roots of the band aren't necessarily on display, but they're really, you wouldn't know them unless you're looking for them, because
they're real underlined. I mean, you got Baker, who's got that chunk, and it's like, to try to replicate that chunk. I mean, you could do it now, sampling it, but back then, I mean, his right hand, he doesn't need a click track. His right hand is always perfectly in time.
Wow.
And for us back then, I mean, that was a seal of approval for punk rock, is that chunk. And it was, for me, it was a lot of that drums is like making it do that, do that, do that. It's the oompa beat, but you slow it down. It's boom, ba, boom, boom, ba. Start to play behind the beat, throw a little jazz, throw a little hit, a little swing to it, and then that's where you get something like Texas or Hot Rod. Hollywood has a swing to it, and that's basically me playing really to the guitar, not at all to the bass. It's like me playing off of Chris's thing.
Yeah,
so a lot of that.
Where you're kind of taking that is like Texas feels like the sleaziest, swaggeriest, if that's a fucking word, Rose Tattoo song.
It's the soundtrack of walking out of a strip joint. You're like, and boom, ba 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 boom, ba ba, same thing.
But it's uppity and angry and
right, exactly.
It's back a little bit like LA punk means the Texas swing that David and Chris took out there when they hooked them up.
That's really it. Yeah.
LA punk and the Texas.
I think what makes it stand out a little bit is the underpinnings of the punk backgrounds of most of the guys who are making that record.
It's a really great marriage that spewed forth a great sound. And my point was just that I don't think that there's really another band that sounds like what you guys are doing.
I hope not.
I mean, I know you're not millionaires because of
right.
But that doesn't matter. But that doesn't matter. I think that something really awesome was created. So
it's
an album. I mean, recording it, pre-production, everything from the minute we got signed until it came out. I mean, for us, it was a great time. It was a fun time. We there was a couple of low moments where we all had it when we got signed, where you get this $1 million deal, but you have no money. But we did like what we normally do, because we're a bunch of punkers and we know how to, get through things and do it ourselves. So it was a great time. And when it came out, it was unexpected that Hollywood was going to do as well as it did for us. We just thought, okay, Hollywood's going to be out there to make way for the next single. And then all of a sudden, you know, we get the hip clip of the week and all that stuff. It was like, oh, okay. Very strange for us, but great time.
Yeah. How do you respond when I say David sometimes rants about like he says something like, I feel like I sold out to my punk rock friends when I got the big deal.
But sure as shit, he cashed those checks.
Exactly.
Well, fuck yeah, he did. When you don't
Hey
have
man, I'm an old punker. The first thing I ever put out was in 1980. I don't give a shit. Pay me.
Right. Hey, hungry is hungry. Hungry is hungry.
Exactly.
Yeah. I always fall
understand
back
his
on
feeling though.
Yeah,
Clash,
of course.
Sex Pistols and the Ramones were all on major labels. I don't get it. I mean,
Right. Yeah. It doesn't.
David Rooks is not more punk than Johnny Rotten. I don't care what he thinks. You know what I mean?
But
I can get it. I get where he's coming from, but the outsider never saw Junkyard as a band that sold out at all. I thought that was the industry moved to them. The industry started moving that way.
That's right.
Because they weren't a pretty boy band. This was the beginnings of the move. You know, and that they got signed before Appetite even came out. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like they were on some coattails. I look at that record because I was there when it was being made and I was playing. I was on the shows, opening, all that stuff. Yeah. I got to see it from inside, but also from outside. I see it as a real reflection of what that little time was like. We're in our little world, and when it goes out wider, you're kind of like, wow, look at that. They really respond to this. I hear Hollywood and I think of it like, oh yeah, it's like when me and Roach were on Wilton, we walked down to the 7-Eleven. I mean, that's what our daily lives were. And there was just like random shit going on, weird clubs, all that stuff. We were all in there together in this soup. And that record to me was really just a reflection of like the lives that we all were kind of living, hand to mouth, trying to make your band happen, driving beat up cars, all that shit. We were all there doing it. So when the record came out, I go, oh, it's really representative of what's going on. And I kind of thought like, are people interested in what's going on here? Because we were, God, we can't wait till we can get out of this kind of like, we thought we were living in the ghetto and it was dangerous. And all those things were true. Little did we know we were having the time of our lives. You know, we had a blast. I mean, we had so much fun because we had to make our own fun. You know, you have to, it wasn't like getting money. So you'd have, you know, parties after gigs. And, you know, once your band gets going, you could get into clubs and you see all your friends and bands and it becomes very that. And you don't end up spending a lot of money, which was important because we didn't have any fucking money. Yeah. And I got signed. I didn't have any dosh. Yeah, I had nothing. You know, I think I moved up to a 1-bedroom as opposed to sleeping on a couch kind of thing. I wasn't a big. Woo! I still had a beater car. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I understand.
I think about that record. It's like, oh, that time, and maybe that's why I'm so fond of those songs, playing them. And maybe David isn't as much because he's just like, oh, I've done that. But I see it. It brings back kind of, you know, fond memories of my youth, I guess. Even though I was, you know, and I was there, I guess I relate to that part of it as much as anything. You know, plus it's good fucking songs. I mean, good songs interest me in any.
Yeah. That's the point. That
I think Roach says that in jest. To be honest, you know.
I you know what? I have to agree with him, but I'm going to agree with David on the sophomore release more than the first album as far as selling out, because that 6s, 7s, 9s. Musically, we didn't sell out, but visually, we me, David, and Todd have a stigma against that all the time in the World video, because it was like, we're going to clean you up, we're going to make you pretty, we're going to put you on MTV, you're going to open up for, you know, you're going to be on Saturday Night Live. It's like, no, we're not. You're cleaning up a pig. Fuck off. It ain't going to work. Too bad the video was fun to be made. It was also a 2-day shoot that was $150K that we, you know, come on, really? It's like, couldn't we have like split it in half so that the other half we got to split to eat? But I understand David's aspect on the selling out aspect because we were asked, can you guys clean up?
Man,
there's a wardrobe budget.
That's a whole
Junkyard shouldn't clean up.
That's a whole other show. $150K to make a video.
Yeah,
and that video.
The money spent. Really? The money spent to make a video. I make a video sitting in this chair.
Today,
I'm being serious. I do. I make video. You know, I blur the backdrop or whatever. You know,
it looks good.
I have editing software now. I don't care. I want to promote something. I can make a fucking video for nothing.
The funny thing is, like, all the time in the world video at the end.
I think 6 of 7 to 9 is also very representative of its time.
Well, it's a good album.
It's a good album. It's a very, I look at it as that you could see the darkness was creeping in. Like things were going, the edges were fraying. I'd already been cycled through and dropped by that point. So that's how fast things were moving back then. I'd been signed, made record, dropped, was coming out the other end. A lot of people had. And I think I was in the room, but I wasn't in the band, but I was, the sense was like, oh, fuck, this thing could all go tits up any minute. And the darkness of that, and maybe crawling a bit more in the bottle because you feel a sense of desperation. There was plenty of that going around. A lot of people you start to see the bits where it wasn't a beer buzz anymore. It was a heavier thing. And I think that record really reflects it. I mean, you look at the cover, it's dark. Everything's a little out of focus.
Yeah.
That's a very reflective record too. I think the first record is it's talking about dark things, it's pretty bright. It's happy. And the second record, you could see that the darkness is starting to get in there a little bit. And it was real because everyone was like, where's this fucking thing going? And that was that was pre-Nirvana. You know what I mean?
First album, you have Happy Hot Rod. Second album, you have Nowhere to Go But Down. It's like, wow, fuck. How dark can that get?
So a lot of your fans point to that record, 6s, 7s, and 9s, as one of their favorite, and it's so difficult to get a hold of. Has there ever been any talk about reissuing it in some form? Because I know a lot of people would love that.
Once we get to that point, I believe with Universal, I think it's the 35-year mark, then it reverts back to us, which all of that stuff is starting to happen now. Like I'm starting to get emails from Universal about some kind of royalty thing, that goes back to 2000. So they're starting to release all that stuff. That being said, we've talked about getting a lawyer and getting that release back to us proper. So that's probably a few years away because that'll be when it hits 35 years or whatever, or we may be able to broker it early, but that also involves getting an attorney and all that,
right. They don't care about the record until you ask for it back, and then they care about it.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
And you're talking about getting the masters, or at least the mix down.
Whatever. Exactly.
It's supposed to revert. I mean, that's the law. You're supposed to revert records at 35 years.
Well, I want to get that first fucking Toys record and reissue it on my own and fucking make the money go right to me and Scott's account,
There you go.
In theory, if you get reversion, you can press your own and be on your way.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
We jumped ahead a little bit, and I wanted to talk real quick, just briefly again about the upcoming dates with Chris, because as someone who lives in Austin, you guys have come to Austin and played, and I was always kind of hoping that Chris would get on stage with you, and it never really happened. And then the last time it did, and then I was excited that, okay, Chris is on stage and they're doing the thing. But now you guys actually talked him into doing a string of dates, like
we're talking him into touring.
This is going to be the first in decades. So How did that phone call go? How did you guys talk him into coming out and getting in the van and doing a string of dates outside of Texas?
God, was it even a phone call, or was it like, hey, do you want to just do it? And he's like, yeah, sounds good.
I think he had fun, and as you get older, fun is in short supply. I think that's part of it. Yeah. I think he liked playing the songs, and we pitched the concept, like, let's just do the first record. Like, that'd be fun. That was because that had been floating. And once Chris came into the fold again and had done that thing, it was always in the back of the mind. Like, that would be the way to do it. And then he was really interested in doing it. And I think what happened was some promoter approached us about doing a show. And we hadn't done one for a while for a bunch of different reasons for a long time. But then I was like, well, if we were going to do it, what would we do? What would make it interesting or exciting as we come back after having been off for over a year? And that was sort of there. And then I think Pat was the one who had the contact with him, but we've had a Zoom band meeting and all these other things, and it's I think we're trying to make ourselves as comfortable as possible within reason these days. But I think we all are prepared, and he's prepared for it. It's not like it's not a luxury cruise. But he is
Right.
not doing the Monsters of Rock cruise because that deal was done, I don't know, 2 years
And
ago.
he's got to earn his way on the boat.
Yeah. And
No.
I'm not sure. And but we set up some West Coast dates, basically our haunts, the Viper Rooms are our clubhouse, bottom of the hill in San Francisco. So we're playing San Diego brick by brick. Last time we were there with Danko right before the pandemic. Well, that's on the 23rd of March. Then we're at the Viper Room on the 24th. All these are with Little Caesar. The first Cali dates are with Little Caesar. The 24th we're at the Viper, and then 25th we're at bottom of the hill in San Francisco. And that one's fun because we're doing the one meet and greet that they're doing on this whole run, and I think we're probably from the Texas ones too. I don't know if we're going to do any of them from the Texas shows too, but it's a little more elaborate than just a step and repeat with a poster. We're going to actually, Chris, David, and I are going to get up and do some acoustic songs, some songs acoustic. Our buddy Ace Von Johnson is going to come out and MC it and DJ it, and then I assume he'll be hanging around too. And so it's at a brewery down the street from the venue. So when you come and get a ticket, you get free beers, and it's someplace to go. We find that we have fans who maybe would travel in for a show, and a lot of times we find them milling around the club around 5 o'clock. Like, what do I do in this town? So we're like, well, this is a great idea because they can go somewhere. They don't have to sit at the venue, which isn't open yet. And so we're doing that. So San Francisco has a kind of an acoustic meet and greet that starts around 5, and then we play there. And then the last show we come back, we're in El Segundo, south of LA, doing South Bay Customs. Yeah. On Sunday the 26th, and then it's Monsters of Rock, and then we're in Texas, Cinco de Mayo at ACL, and then
the place that we're playing in Dallas is where is it called?
The venue in Dallas? There was a change.
It'll be confirmed by the time this comes out. It is Three Links. Deep Ellum.
I've heard of it. Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
And then we're doing Cooters down in Eagles Pass with our buddy Will, and that's all we have for right now. That's it. So we're kind of let's see how this goes, and we'll go from there. And
well, I think doing the first album in its entirety and then having Chris along for a string of those dates is a real treat for your fans. I wanted to know also whatever happened to what's the status of the new music, because you guys one of you guys sent me about 6 tracks months ago.
Yeah,
and I was listening to it again recently, and it's 6 tracks is half an album, and it's good stuff. So where are we with that?
Well, originally the plan was the single Lifer and Last of a Dying Breed were just going to be on the new record, and we got bogged down about how we were going to do this new record. What did we have the songs, all these other things. And so I was kind of like, let's just put out a single, people do singles a lot. And that was the idea behind Lifer as kind of a teaser. We didn't plan, our hiatus wasn't planned. I had my wife had some health issues for last year, and we're just coming out of the woods on that, thankfully. But once that hit, I shut everything down. I said, I'm not going to do anything but that. So the fact that we're coming out is evidence that things have improved on my home front, which allowed me to refocus on other things in my life besides that. And so the record got backburnered, basically. That's really it. I mean, it's there. Most of it's there. I think we'll need a few more. And that actually was the first thing I talked to Chris about when we were in Austin when I saw you. And I was like, we got basically the record, but we could use some stuff. And he's like, I'll give you some stuff. So my hope is that we can get Chris to at least write a bit on this. And then we got to go in and knock the fucker out. I mean, that's the reality. And there's a bunch of different scenarios about how we could do that. But we do need to go out and actually just record it. So, and then there's also talk about recording a bunch of these for a live album as well. The shows were coming up. Let's have a live album come out of it.
That's exciting.
To make a lot sense.
We will be recording anything audio-wise. I mean, that hopefully they'll allow us to.
Yeah. Hopefully get full versions of everything. From
the tracks that you sent me, I think there was one called Rank Outsider.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
Deep, Red Blooded Sun.
Yeah.
Is that right? And
those are right.
Yeah, and those are great, man. They are right in the Junkyard wheelhouse. So
yeah, they need to get doing. I really like we even banged around Rank Outsider a little bit live. I think, didn't we, Pat? Like it was our soundtrack song for a while.
Those songs that you got, Dave. Those, I mean, they basically, you'd kind of, Tim, you did those during lockdown, right? And like maybe the first time, like the month of virus or the vaccine was available. So we were all, separated. I bought an electronic drum set. So it would, play along and all that shit. But, and then David actually recorded some vocals and the songs that you have, David. Yeah. I mean, this album to me, this upcoming album, whenever we get a chance to do it, and David has alluded to this as well in the past. This next album, look out, and you've heard some of it. So just look, imagine that fully produced and tweaked and everything. It's going to blow people's fucking minds.
I should.
I'm very proud of
fear, so I'm fear.
Tim, shut up, Tim. It sounds good.
No, I was talking to someone. We were talking to someone last night, and they were talking about High Water, and I said, my goal. When we were making it, because I worked on that for seems like forever.
Great album.
Yeah.
And my goal was that it would at least be an argument that it's in the conversation of the first two records. Like, could it be a justifiable argument that High Water can sit along those two? And I'm not saying we'd win the argument or whatever, but if there was at least an argument for it, I had considered we had achieved what we set out to do. At least in my mind as the producer. Yeah. Now I got to do this new record. I'm like, well, shit. Now I think it's got to be as good as High Water, So I always have that,
Well, that's great that you're setting the bar so high for yourself, because I thought High Water, and you guys know this, I thought it was a fantastic record, and I've said, and I've written reviews where I said it stands alongside those first two Junkyard records, no problem. And the thing I like about the new songs that I'm hearing is that I hear a little, I don't know if you'd call it a progression, but there's a slight, a little different sound. To me, it leans a little more Hangman, sort of, cowpunk, more so than like metal. And I never thought of you guys as a metal band, but I think I'm making my point.
I know you are. Yeah.
I think there was a kind of, they started just happening this way, but there's a bit more roll in the rock on this one. There's a little more rock and rolly. So a little more, I mean, I don't want to say Stones because it's not that, but there's some of the songs that I wrote, I was like, thinking like Status Quo almost, like kind of this big riffy swingy thing. I really love that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, Todd actually wrote a couple of cool little riffs that became songs. And he has this kind of like inherent Aerosmith pocket in the way he writes stuff. Yeah. I just cherry.
Uh-oh.
Froze again.
But
survey says. The
survey
says.
He's back.
I think the general thought I had was like, let's be a little more rock, a little more roll on our rock. Like with the High Water, lean punk, I'll say that, with some, different elements. But I think if we just get a little more swingy on this, I don't know. But you got to go where the writing takes you too. I mean, the songs are going to take you where they're going to take you. So I think it's still a work in progress, but
I think my point is that there's a slightly different flavor of Junkyard, but it's still familiar at the same time. So anyone who's a Junkyard fan, this is not going to be a severe turn that's going to lose you. But I do hear some different textures and different flavors to it, but it's all in that Junkyard wheelhouse, and I think it sounds great. Yeah. I'd love to see it get, added 5 more songs or whatever and release as a proper album when the time is right.
I mean, I think I look at every Junkyard record starting from the first on through. There is a progression. Some people may not see it, but we know when we're doing some. I thought Lifeford to Faded was a progression. I mean, there was progression there, and maybe it's just exploring certain facets of the sound and some other things. But I always am looking for us to move forward in some way, and it might be really subtle things, like I call it, it's a difference of silk degrees. Like I'll notice just little things that we're doing slightly new or different in each of these new songs, and I'm always looking for that. Like, how can we kind of, rejigger this without getting too far from what the core of us is, and then also try and bring new elements in and keep it exciting for us. I mean, I think Junkyard Records are always really honest about where we're at and what we're doing and what we're into. It's always been that way. That's why people relate to him so much. David's like incapable of being dishonest, and so that's really important. So like musically honest is also important to us too. But I would talk about Junkyard has such a great foundation. The basic core concept sonically of the band is so solid. You can do a lot of stuff with it, but you also know like it's a really strong table. There's no reason to weaken a leg just for the sake of it. You know what I mean? So it's always like, we have this. This is great. We're so lucky to have it. Like I was talking about with Simple Man, like, wow, pillars we have, woo. Now, what can we build around that? Where can we,
Right.
And so sometimes we're just nipping at the margins of change, but to us, it's still a progression forward,
Sure. Yeah. And it's important that you guys keep it fresh for yourselves as well.
That way it makes it interesting for us.
Right.
It's like the last thing you want to do is over and over.
Yeah, I mean, David's the king of that. He's more so forward thinking than me. I'm very new. He's like 10 times that. He's like, oh, I'm bored of High Water.
It's like, great.
He's always like moving forward.
I'm sick of right outsider. All right, next song.
It takes a lot of brain. It takes a lot of, we curate stuff very thoroughly. We're probably slow.
Yeah.
I know we are. Everyone says, what takes y'all so fucking long? Because we fucking go over everything. Like we
put it under the microscope. I mean, we got the world's best bullshit detector in Todd Muscat when it comes to everything, so it's got to go through him, and then it sifts through them, and then it goes back again, then it goes back to him. And it's and
it's not about the presentation of the music. Like, I like our records rough and ready. That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's the content. Like, what are we saying? What is the sonic imprint of this? What is this about? All that. I mean, we don't have those conversations like out loud. We're not Coldplay or some shit. But there is a sense that when something isn't ringing true, like if it's not just clicking the thing, the bullshit meter goes off, and a lot of us are like, eh. And so we'll know halfway during, like 4 beats into a verse. It's like, nah, nope. It's like we all stop at the same time without even looking at each other. Like, no, it ain't working. Yeah. It's a gut feeling, and Jason, this. It's like, if it ain't working, no, fuck it, next, Yeah,
that leads me to want to know, I mean, there's not one way to write a song, but when you guys are doing, one of your processes, everybody has a process, but they have multiple process. Is it you guys riffing and just jamming on a part in a room, or do you guys email parts to each other? And
it's an email. Yeah,
it's an email. I mean, we'll occasionally jam on stuff. Sometimes I'll have rough ideas and bring them into rehearsal and say, let's monkey about with this. Right. I think a good example of that was the song Love. That's had a long gestation period. It came in as David had a verse. He had most of the pre-chorus and some of the first verse, I think. We were monkeying about it. I had some of the chord changes. And actually, Jason, you played a part in this, how this ended up happening.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And we started monkeying about with it. And we even got into rehearsal. And I think I kind of came away going, chorus is not really, it just wasn't happening yet. There's really good elements, but it's not there. And so pretty common is, and Lifer and the Last Dying Breed is, a lot of High Water was done like this. There'll be a germ of an idea either created by Brian or me, or David even has full-blown songs that he just sings, and I'll bang out the chords and work underneath, try and figure out what the choral structure would be underneath his vocal. He'll sing it, I'll just kind of, but I've done that before. That's a perfectly fine way to work. But say for like Lifer, we were kind of monkeying about with it, and Brian happened to be in town, and he had a couple things, and he's like, let's get together and have a little, song pool about what we have going. And here's the story. I was playing him this, he was playing me that. We had a few of these songs, some of these demos, and Last of a Dying Breed was something Brian had, and he played it for me, and I was like, well, that's fucking great. Let's knock that out right there. And I remember I had him play it straight through into Logic, but I didn't even put a drum beat or anything. I didn't even turn on the click. I go, just play it. And then I said, let me see if I can and then he left, and I said, maybe I could drag some drums in here to make it sound right. And his meter is so good. Without a click track, he played the whole thing in fucking time. It was unbelievable. I'm like, wow. Yeah. I mean, I got moved like 2 bars. It was ridiculous. he just his internal meter, and that song is a stop and start. It's really easy to pull that motherfucker. So in that session, I was playing Lifer bits and bobs, and he's like, yeah, I see what you're saying, and we were kind of hemming and hawing. We had some of the lyrics, and we were, David wasn't there. It was just the two of us, and then we got in talking about our last December trip to Texas, whenever this was. It was a few years back. And he says, and I said, oh, I ran into Jason, broke a teeth open. It was great. And he's like, oh, it's Jason. How's he doing? And I just turned around and go, oh, he's a lifer. And we went bing. And that was it. And he goes, lifer. And I wrote the chorus right there, And nice. I said, David, he changed a line or two in the chorus, and that was it. So that's very it. Like lots of ideas, hopefully some inspiration when you need it. And we had that. And then that kind of took us off. Like once we had lifer, actually, it became, it's like, well, now we know what Last Dying Breed's going to be about, too. It's like it's a compendium. You know what I mean?
Whether I had anything to do with it or not, the interesting thing is that everything is right in front of you all the time. Everything that you need is right in front of you all the time. So when you're writing, especially honest rock and roll, where there's not a computer in the house, where you're not writing on a beep, boop, beep, boop, right?
Yeah.
Where you have wood and wire and everyone's banging on wood and wire.
Yeah.
You're creating something from nothing. And when you have that blockage all the time, there's something, I'm gonna take a break, I'll go watch TV. And then, the news will come on and somebody will say something. That's it. I'll run away.
Yeah.
You just sat down. That same.
And that was kind of a launching off point. And I don't know if it wasn't the next record. I thought, let's write about, that's kind of an interesting idea. Like, what about us, these guys in their 50s who still do this fucking thing? You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't want to depressed in the Learjet, Bon Jovi image of anything, but, I mean, like, and no one wants to hear about old people complaining about sitting in the back of a minivan for 7 hours, but that's the reality of the life. And how do you make that interesting? Because it is something we all still share, as at least, the five of us have been through a bunch of that and all the pushes and pulls of all that. So some of that started to filter into, like definitely in The Last of Dying Breed. So then it kind of gives you sort of, some thematic idea about what are we going to talk about next. And because it just wrote itself, I'm like, well, if this came like this, maybe there's more here, maybe more to this story, and because I thought High Water was about, it was a comeback. So there was a lot of redemption in a lot of those songs, like overcoming, redemption, and also some reminiscence. A song like Faded is really about reminiscence and like going back to your child, but that's something when you do when you're older, you don't reminisce when you're 21 generally. And so, I thought this record might be, at least thematically, it's not fucking Quadrophenia, but I thought those two songs kind of wrote themselves that way. And it's like, well, it's obvious this is sort of something we're talking about a bit.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. It's kind of like Lonesome Cowboy. He's on the trail.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
He's eating squirrel, he's sitting there, a can of beans and dead squirrel, and he's got a guitar with 4 strings on it, and he's just kind of talking about his life. It's the same thing as like the old blues guys when they didn't have a nickel, but they had a guitar with 2 or 3 strings on it.
Right.
They can't read or write. But everything right in front of them, they can barely talk. They don't even know correct English, but they can write 1,000. They can write 1,000 fucking songs, and they're all true.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's the same story, man.
The video for Lifer is awesome. If anyone out there is listening that hasn't seen it, it is a killer video, and I'm not just saying that because me and Jason are in it.
If you knew how long it took to curate that video, if you talk,
it's a good way to plug the video.
You talk about us like going, like really taking, like we really go over our product. That is a great example. Those montages that flew by at the speed of light.
Yes,
we argued and kibitzed about forever and ever. Because
each one of those was like a 10 to 15 minute conversation, and there's like about 300 of them.
Yeah,
and I feel so bad for Todd because Todd's like, I hear you. But then, I mean, that's the mark of a great fucking producer editor is like he takes it all in, and within 15 minutes, he's like, here's the new cut. It's like, oh fuck, well, done.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Right.
Who gets in, why they get in, all that.
Right,
I mean,
yeah,
every
yeah.
person picked. There's a reason. Every
Yeah.
single person that was chosen, there is a reason. It wasn't like give me rock people on Google and just drag and drop. Like every single person was curated. There was a reason every person was in. Some people don't know who everyone is, unless
Right, yeah.
Nick Nefarious Fox knew them all. So we're gonna have
Of course.
talk about having a contest. Like the first one to get them all, gets I don't know what the hell I'm gonna give him, gets a T-shirt or something like
Oh,
that.
that's
And
a
then we
great-
always felt like, why? Let's just send Nick Nefarious Fox the T-shirt.
Yeah,
now.
just send him
You know what I
everything
mean?
already.
He'll
Yeah.
get them before we've even anybody. Because I
Well,
don't
you should
even know
call
them
it. You should call it the Nick Nefarious Fox contest.
award.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just give him a bunch of swag already. So
Exactly.
we're naming the contest after you, so you can't be in the contest.
Anyone who
So we're
doesn't
gonna-
know who Nick Nefarious Fox is,
Right.
follow him on Facebook, and you will get an education in all things rock and roll. He knows
He
more
educates,
just about
he
anybody I
educates
know.
me about my own past.
Yes.
I'm like, wait,
We
in
learn a lot
1983
about
I
our
did
own
what?
history
He's like,
from-
oh.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. If
He's not
anyone
like
out there hasn't seen the Lifer video, go check it out. And I know exactly what you're saying, Tim. Knowing you guys, when I look at that montage, it's like every image in that video has some connection to Junkyard. It's not just a random collection. It's like it's the real deal. Awesome. I mean, if you watch that video, you could build a record collection off of that video.
Yes.
And you would have the best record collection in town. So it's an awesome video. Check it out, Junkyard Lifer. And
Sounds like we need to have your friend on our show.
I think
Yeah.
having Nick on the show would be amazing. He's every time we go to the UK, it's always a highlight to see him. And I mean, the conversations that I've had with him, while it be brief, maybe 35, 45 minutes, I just shut up and I let him talk. And it was just like, man, it was great. I mean, I ran into him hungover in London. Me and Todd ran into him hungover, and he's like, well, let me take you for a cup of coffee. I'm like, fuck yeah. I'm like, yes, school me on everything. And at that point, that's when he told me I was in a band in 1983 that I didn't even know about. So Tim just texted, he's going to come back on.
Yeah, that's cool. Here he is.
No problem.
There we
Sorry
go.
about that.
So yeah,
That's all right.
So Nick is a man, Tim. Nick lived out. He lived out in L.A. in the early '80s, or was it
Like 91.
And then he split.
Yeah.
Oh, in '91. Okay, but he
Yeah.
wasn't here for like the big, the
He was
88.
here- He was here just after the wave receded. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah.
The beach was still wet, but it wasn't what it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Moses left town.
Yes.
Right.
exactly.
The sea wasn't parted anymore. The waters were mixed together again.
But we
bank shut the
probably look at
doors.
that period as being like the decline. But if you came in from McLean, you're probably like, well, there's so much great shit going on here. So
There was.
we only could compare it to what we knew, But
Yeah.
that's the inevitable thing about scenes. Maybe I'm digressing a bit, but people talk about what happened when why they grow, all those kind of things. Is well, when you scoop up all the good bands that made the scene and send them on the road for 2 fucking years, your scene's going to dry up. They have to make a living. I'm not saying, but that's just the nature of it. It happened in Seattle too.
Yeah.
The bands go out and they go forth and become, touring artists and all that stuff. And it's hard. There's hard to replace that level of talent all the time. It's just, it was too much to replace. That had as much to do with as anything, especially the specific Hollywood scene. You know what I mean?
Right.
And, so I think Nick was there, and we were all still playing. I was still playing around, but it was just not.
Yeah.
It didn't have the same level of excitement and energy. But that's a level that I think, looking back, very few cities have ever gotten to.
For sure.
And so I it's not surprising that it had a short life. But most scenes. I had a thing we should talk about, like if you can visualize, if you see a scene, like if there's a scene somewhere and it's happening, you've missed it. You know what I mean? You like, I think something's happening. You generally don't know. It's only kind of like, oh, this is starting. You could read about it outside sources and things like that. But if you can visualize a scene or a trend, you've missed it. And I think that's very true. Like you find the word finally filters out to all parts of the world about what's happening in Hollywood. Well, yeah, it was happening 2 fucking years ago. It just it used to take that long for shit to get out.
Yeah. Pat, I want to ask you, your snare drum. You play. You have a very unique setup. You play with the snare drum tilted away from you at a pretty extreme angle. So, how did that come about?
I fell down, hurt my wrist skateboarding, and I went to a doctor, and he said, "You need to twist your drums differently." Now, basically,
Wow.
I fell. Me and a couple of old Dogtown guys were skating in Santa Monica, and this was 2015. We were skating in a very small, like a 5-foot little half pipe kind of thing. Well, that's where you really get the most amount of damage, is because you go straight from 5 foot to the bottom. So for me, I ended up snapping my left wrist back, and so I went to a doctor that had a background with musicians and drummers especially. And he looked at my setup. He goes, "You got to start tilting it like Buddy Rich, man. Like tilt it to the side." I'm like, "Yeah, man, let's do that." And every time I hit it, I'd crack my knuckles. I'm like, "No, that ain't working." So he just, little by little, we just tilted it towards the drum set, towards, the crowd, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's when everything started to feel better. But basically, it's an ergonomic thing. And a lot of guys are doing it. I didn't realize that I was doing it at the same time that Jack White's drummer was doing it. And when we both met each other, I think the first thing that we said to each other was like, you stole my tilt. But so basically that's where it comes from. And now it's now when I play regular, like normal people play, it's like, oh, this feels weird,
Yeah.
So I blame it on skateboarding. So
Actually makes sense, because
I blame it on this fucking thing.
right. Actually makes sense, because there's something different about having to turn your hand and not turn your hand.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, the weird thing is so you got a thing that's angled like that. Normally, like you hit a drum and you're like, it's like, oh, it jars the motion. Well, with this, it's like you're going straight down.
Right.
So it's an ergonomic thing, but it's also weird. People sit down. You got to really, when I build my erector set, it's, every 2 seconds I'm tweaking everything, because if I don't, I'm going to break a knuckle. So,
Yeah.
But it all comes from skateboarding, like everything else in my life.
And Tim, I was going to ask you, for people that don't know, you've alluded to this earlier in the conversation. You've been sort of a member of the Junkyard family, at least on the sidelines, for a long, long time. And before that, you talked about you cycled in and out of the system. You were in a band called, is it Broken Glass? Is that right?
Yeah, Broken Glass. Yeah.
So Broken Glass, and you brought the song Tried and True to Junkyard. And before Old Habits Die Hard was released, I was privy to some of the bootleg versions of some of the songs that ended up on Old Habits Die Hard. And when I first heard Tried and True, I was like, oh my God, that's a great song. That's amazing. And I didn't know that the origins came from you and Broken Glass.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, where was Broken Glass in the scene? What time frame? Where were you compared to, say, like Junkyard and Faster Pussycat, LA Guns, those types of bands? Give us a little background.
Yeah, I got in LA in the fall of '86, and I think Chris and David were some of the first people I met, honestly.
Wow.
I was from DC originally, and so maybe we reached out to Chris because of our punk leaning, like, go to the punk guy. When in doubt, find the punks. And we just became friends. They were living at Texas West, and we'd see each other. We lived in the same shitty neighborhood, so you kind of see each other at the 7-Eleven level kind of thing. I got a job on Melrose, started working on Melrose at a trendy shoe shop, which was like your entree into the scene back then, because Melrose was very happening. They were coming around. Pat would come around there. I met Pat there, smoking pot in the back of the shoe store with and the guy who owned that store managed LA Guns, Alan Jones. So those guys were around. You just sort of like get immersed in it. I'd come out with some buddies. Some went by the wayside and some stayed around. But through that, I met Alvin Gibbs, who started Broken Glass with me. And Alvin's in the UK subs, always has been. And he was the one who reached out to me about starting this band. I'd come out with this other guys, and we played some shows around, probably even Hope for Junkyard in this earlier version of whatever it was. And or maybe Pirates of Venus or something like that. And Alvin had seen us and said, "Oh, well, you're a good songwriter. Let's start a band," because that thing had fallen apart. So I started a band with Alvin, and then we got Mark Diamond, who's now in the Dwarfs, who was in New York Loose. I just met him a buddy of mine gave him my phone. I need a guitar player. Call Mark Diamond. It was actually Tim P from Flies on Fire gave me Mark Diamond's phone number. And Dickie was just Dickie replaced Alvin. So we get going. Alvin had some notoriety, so we were able to get some good shows. Junkyard put us on shows like instantly. We were opening for Junkyard.
Always, yeah.
For, the Nymphs. We were opening for Funhouse. We were opening for whoever. And Kill for Thrills was coming up then. I was friends with Todd. And David, the drummer, used to work at Flash Feet. We all worked at the same store. It was very small. Like, this is like, we're talking about 13, 14 guys, all kind of just like playing. Junkyard was a little bit further ahead. But Brian wasn't in the band yet. Brian walked into Flash Feet, about to break up Dag Nasty. I said, you should move up into Hollywood. He was down on the beach. He moved up. He ran into Chris at that 7-Eleven while he was out crashing, trying to find his way. I got him a job at Flash Feet. And he ran to Chris at that 7-Eleven right when when we're needing a new guitar player. That's how that happened. Yeah. It was just he'd happened to be in Hollywood hanging with me. And that's how all that happened. They knew each other from the punk days. Brian gets in Junkyard. So it's even more interconnected. And so we're doing tons of shows with them. Junkyard was already making their first album, and, they weren't playing much, and we got popular. We played with the Hangman all the time. In fact, the Hangman's the reason we kind of got popular. We were trying to get going. And they dropped off a bill, and we slid into their slot, and we played a headline slot at Scream Club, which at the time was like that major. Oh, and we went from being like, okay, to like selling out the Club Lingerie on our own on a Saturday night. That's how the scene was. Like, you get the right exposure, you got big. And we got on all those bills at Scream Club where you're on with like Jane's and Burning Tree and Social Distortion and all that stuff. So we were doing all the right shows, and we got a record deal, as you did, and we made an album, regime change at label. We were on Chrysalis, same time as Slaughter. They had just and they came out like a month before us and sold a bunch. We came out and didn't sell fuck all. So they dropped us. We were trolling around looking for a new record deal for a while. And that was one of the songs. I really thought that was like, well, this will save our ass. This fucking song. It's pretty good. Tried and true. We had it, and I'd written it. And I was like, well, this might get us a record deal again, I thought. And we were doing it in shows. And it's not like anyone asked me. I just came in one day and they were playing it. So I said, well, yeah, go for it. Do it. And David's like, what are the lyrics again? That kind of a thing, So, and then that sort of began the process on that third record where I was brought in to write, because I was at loose ends. And the idea was, well, just come in and write. We need help. And so I wrote whatever's on of that whole time, all those songs. And then what came out on Old Habits Die Hard. I wrote a bunch on that. In fact, that line is a lyric from a song that I wrote on the record. It didn't make the actual thing, but that Old Habits Die Hard, like ex-girlfriends and favorite bars. Those things come up. I used to write lyrics with David all the time, and he still brings things out that he said, what is the one, and that song Hellbound on High Water, that's an old lyric that I had kicking around when we were just writing lyrics for the third album. And that line where he, walks into a bar and they don't play he likes to shake it to the crew. They don't play Bob Dylan here. That was one of mine that I'd said it once or twice, and he had jotted it down in the process of writing what was going to be that third album. So we were writing together a lot. Sometimes it'd be music, sometimes it'd be lyric. I'd just chip it with lyrics. Sometimes Brian and I. So I was involved in it then. I think there was even discussion of maybe like, well, maybe you come because you could sing backup vocals and
right, yeah, there was
on keyboards, and we'll have acoustic or whatever. It was all
like multi-purpose kind of thing.
Yeah, you'll be a utility guy if it gets. It was all just discussion at that point. But all those, I was around a lot because they were also recording songs that I wrote too. So I'd go to the studio and see how they were coming out. And Tried and True was one of those, and it was just there. And I was like, oh, this sounds pretty good. I mean, I think they probably thought this, I think there was a thought, Pat could probably say if true, like, okay, here's our ballad for the album,
Oh, no, it was. When we recorded Tried and True at Rick Parker's place, and you were down there, you were hanging out around with us in that backyard. We were like, and all of it was Holding On, which I think you had a part of.
Yeah.
Tried and True, Hard Times Land. There was some other shit, but it was right at the tail end. It was like 1992, maybe 1993 or something like that. Yeah, because I think we got officially dropped in 93, 94, something weird like that. But when we were recording those songs, the quality of it also, we were in the studio every day because, well, we had nothing else to do. And that's, Geffen was paying for our tab. So when we did those sessions, the Tried and True sessions with Rick Parker that came out on the Tried and True EP or whatever, we were really on our game. And at that point, it was like, yeah, Tried and True. This is Simple Man on steroids. This is gonna do it for us.
Yeah.
Little did we know that our third record would basically what Geffen said with us on our third record is like, we'll put it out, totally put it out, but we're not going to promote anything. We're not going to do anything. Basically, you're getting an album and that's it. Yeah. And it's like no tour support, no nothing. It's like, no, it's like, well, okay. And at that point, then, we knew the writing was on the wall, but the Tried and True, that was a big song.
I'm glad the song has had some kind of afterlife. I've written a lot of songs, so it's nice, but that one seems to have connected. I see the odd Tried and True tattoo and stuff like that, and a lot of people, it's my favorite Junkyard song, and most people don't know I wrote it, I don't think.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
That's part of the reason I wanted to bring it up today, is to give you credit where credit is due. But more importantly, I remember hearing it like on a burned copy of a CD, and I was like, oh my God, this song is a hit, man. And just like you're saying, Pat, it's like this would have been the follow-up to Simple Man had the world had a chance to hear it, So I'm glad it finally got a proper release on the Old Habits Die Hard record. Yeah.
I think that's what the Old Habits Die Hard thing was. Like, let's put a bow on this. Like, it's all floating about, and there was, can we come to a consensus about what's the quality here? And I felt some ownership because I had written so much of it too. So I had my feelings about it. I guess it's the first Junkyard record I was officially involved in, even though it never came out as a real record. But so we kind of, there it is. And so we culled down all the stuff that was supposed to be for the third album. There's always things that are going to get left out just to make it on one piece of vinyl. But we weren't going to do some gatefold double album shit. So it was like, and our feeling was there's probably 11 or 12. There might have been good songs that just weren't executed right. And you can't go put that genie back in the bottle. So there's some of that too. It was like, why didn't you put this on? Like, there's the idea of that is good, but it's not executed right. And so you have to make some decisions that are sometimes hard. And that's representing that album a little bit. Like the song, the song Old Habits Die Hard didn't make it. It's a good song. It was a little, it just didn't, the version wasn't great, or I don't know what the fuck it was. You know what I mean? So
it didn't hold up. It didn't hold up to the other stuff.
Yeah. Also, some people love it. Some people, it's the best song on there, but you're always going to get that. So
I think what was it was a 5 of us plus our label, and everybody. All right, submit your top 11 or 12 songs or whatever. And I think all of our songs were exactly the same.
Yeah,
so it was that song was always left off, but then the lyric was always so classic. It's like, well, this makes sense, to call it that.
Yeah. Yeah, if anyone listening hasn't picked up Old Habits Die Hard, pick it up. It was intended to be the third Junkyard record, and even though it came out years and years and years later, it does sound like the third Junkyard record. It sounds like it could have come right after. So if you're a fan of the first two, you owe it to yourself to get that third one, even though it came out many years later. We just lost Gary Rossington the other day, and I know that Junkyard toured with Lynyrd Skynyrd. Do you have any Gary Rossington stories? And I guess Tim wasn't in the band at the time, were you?
No, but Tim was there. And Tim's our stories about Gary were pretty normal, but Tim's story is probably the best.
Oh,
actually, they asked me to come down, and they were doing the Skynyrd tour. Maybe it was one of the last shows of that tour, but that was the Union tour, so it was a big deal. And it was sheds and arenas and stuff like that. And so Brian's like, "Oh, come down to the OC show. It'll be a hoot. It's a nice venue." And Little Caesar was on the bill, and so I get down there, and they'd been there all day, because they would just go and shower at the venue. The drill, Jason. So like no hotels, bus, so they're there all day, and it's a nice backstage and all that stuff. So I go in the backstage, and it's middle of the day. We're of course like drinking beers and whatever, and being our usual, like, let's have some beer. And there was a catering thing, and Junkyard at the time, I assume, just got a couple fifths of Jack Daniels and cartons of cigarettes and 2 cases of Budweiser, whatever the fuck it was. But there was a couple,
T-shirts,
fifths of Jack Daniels on the catering table, and it's like cement room. You know what these rooms look like, these dressing rooms. And so we're all kind of sitting there talking, and in the doorway walks Gary Rossington, and he looks just like Gary Rossington. He's not like in day of show outfit. He's like in show outfit, but it's noon. And so he's got like, he wears the long shirt, he's got the cowboy boots and the bell-bottom jeans and the hat, and he's pulled down, he's got a goatee. And I mean, we're all like, I hadn't been on the road there for months. This is the first time I ever seen a member of Skynyrd in person. I grew up on fucking Skynyrd. I'm like, wow. And I'm like, wow, it's fucking Gary Rossington. And he's like, how you boys doing? We're like, we're good. Just like, and he
Yes,
kind
sir.
of just sits there and he's like, all right. He walks in the dressing room, walks over to the catering table, grabs the fifth of Jack Daniels, turns around and walks out. And right by the doorway, there's one of those big, tall plastic trash cans. He just kind of turns around and just kicks the trash can over, all the shit flying out into the dressing room and walks out. Doesn't say anything. I'm like, wow, that was awesome. He was so great. I was like, fucking Gary Rossington. And he just grabs the fifth of Jack, kicks over a trash can and walks out of the opening band's dressing room. Like, oh yeah, they're intimidated. Don't worry. They're intimidated.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
That's
great.
classic. So
Yeah.
Gary Rossington trashed your dressing room. That's awesome.
Great.
Literally.
We all were just like, I think he walked out. We all went, oh, it's so awesome. We were so excited.
They were
like
still
little
serving
teenagers, like,
breakfast
oh my God.
burritos.
You're so fucking cool. That was my one Gary Rossington story. That was a pretty good one, though.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. You guys, you've got Chris Gates coming out with you for a few shows here and there. Has there ever been any talk about Brian Baker coming out and doing anything, or is he just so busy with Bad Religion that
I mean, he's due. There's no doubt. I mean, he's done a bunch with us. When Chris left originally, he came in and was the guy. It was only when it became obvious that we were going to have to tour with High Water a lot more than we had before that we're like, we got to get someone who could just come. He had a lot of shit going on, obviously.
Yeah.
So it was originally, I came in and started playing Brian's parts in the band when it was Chris, and then Chris left, and I took all of Chris's parts, and Brian came back and did his parts, and so. But Brian's due. I imagine if the timing's right, he would do it in a heartbeat. He's signing with us at M3. It's very much being in the same place and the availability and all that other kind of thing. But I think with the right environment, he would love to do it. I know he loves doing it. It's fun,
Yeah.
It's so different from Bad Religion. It's always a hoot, So
I mean, even during the time in 2014, 2015, 2016, while he was in Bad Religion, he did a couple shows with us at the Viper Room, and he did two shows with us at the Whiskey, one in Van Nuys with Bucket. So it's
he's around, he's writing on this new record. He wrote a ton on High Water with me. He played on High Water. I mean, he's around. It's not like he's not around. He's in the ether. He contributes still. His physical presence is rare, but his actual intellectual property is more prevalent than people probably realize.
Wow.
Yeah.
What would you say has been the highlight since the band has been reactivated since 2017?
There's been a lot. I mean, we had one year where I think we got close to the most amount of shows that we used to do back in the day. And I want to say that was like 2018 or 2018 or 17. I mean, I think we tallied it and it was like, oh, we did a significant amount of like 80 shows or something like that. It's like, oh, that's up there for like 1989, 1990 for us. And that point, at the end of that year, I think it was that was a highlight for me. I think because I think it was the last show out of those 80 shows in San Francisco, and it was a fun show. I think might have been New Year's Eve or something like that. But that's a highlight for me. But I mean, in general, every show is a highlight because at our age, just walking out of the house is a highlight.
I mean, there's a lot of that. Like, if people turn up still, I consider that a highlight. It's kind of a miracle. We're blessed that people still have interest, and sometimes there are more people that have more interest and sometimes there are less. That's the nature of it, but I guess the highlight, I think High Water being so well received, or especially when Faded came out, we had no idea what that was going to be about, and then when that was on Coolest Song in the World on Little Steven and aired for months, I'd hear it all the time. And it's the one time I was driving my kid to school because I have Sirius, and we would play the radio and I would come on. And that's the only time in my life that it ever happened. And I would take him into school in the morning, and it'd be, say 7:20, which is prime drive time on Garage, and it would come on. And he's like, "That's you," and I go, "Yeah." And then he'd get back in the car, pick up 4 o'clock or whatever, and it just by having
And it's back on
heavy
again.
rotation, it was back on again. He's like, they're playing it again. And I go, it's in heavy rotation. Who the fuck knew? You know what I mean? And for some reason, it stayed in heavy rotation for longer than the average one. And so that's kind of a high. I mean, just to hear yourself in your own car is pretty neat, and especially later. I'm just talking about like this is like, you know, we're in our that record came out, we were all probably 50, right, or close to it.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was like, wow, this is happening now. And then I remember we were playing M3, which would end up being
that was a highlight.
show.
Yeah.
Like we kind of go into a lot of the shows like, do people know us or like us? I don't know. We don't know. And we played it. We had a great show, but the label called and said, oh yeah, you guys, that record, the album's going to fucking chart on some metal chart in actual Billboard. I'm like, what? You fucking kidding? And all these things were just beyond like, wow. We thought like
okay.
In our mind, the hardcore fans would buy this record and it would be cool, but you know, and then it's, you know, it was critically well received. That's also very nice. And and there are, like I've talked about, there are some people that's their entry point to Junkyard. Like, oh, you made other records? Like, yeah, there was a couple a long time ago. So we made some fans like, no, I bought High Water first. It's great. I mean, there's others. I'm like, that to me, those are kind of like, well, okay, well, it works as its own freestanding entity now. It could exist separately from the old if you cleaver them apart. It is a full concept that is equally as valid. Now, we wouldn't have the fan base we have without the old. We all, of course, know that. But we have reestablished the brand or the band as an ongoing concept again. And I think that's a pretty big achievement. It's hard to do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Very, very good point. And there's a reason, you know, I mean, first of all, you take a hiatus like that and then you come out with a new album. It makes sense that a new generation might discover the latest album and not be aware of the previous, you know.
I love that. When that happens, that's just like, that's Christmas to me.
Yeah.
Great.
I want Jason to talk real quick about the time when Junkyard and Dangerous Toys toured together. And then we've heard this story on the show before on the podcast, but we haven't heard it from Pat. Talk about the tour that you guys did together, how long, what happened, all that stuff. And then tell us about the time that you guys were in each other's company when your videos debuted on MTV.
Wait, oh God, I don't remember this. Wait a minute. Were we on tour at the same time?
No, it was summer of '89 so it was prior to the jaunt that we did together. Right. Okay. But Teasin' Pleasin' debuted back to back with Hollywood.
Is that right?
Right.
And a lot of people don't remember that exact moment. It's burned into my brain.
Is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's like for your high school, for your high school buddy to come on right after your video.
Oh, right after. Oh, I see. Gotcha.
That is insane. Yeah. That is
literally.
It was the same night. Yeah. They debuted
next to each other, and
right.
They didn't. Whoever programmed that had no idea what they were doing.
Right.
I mean, I remember when it came on, I specifically remember because we were at Geronimo's house and we were like, because that's the only person, my drum tech was the only guy who had a big enough TV for all of us to go over there. So we had a party.
Yeah.
You did well. So
I think I was by myself just in my apartment, and I was like, wow, it's supposed to come on. I'm trying to work the remote, and I got it to work.
This thing ain't working. I was like, where's the rabbit ears?
The junkyard's right next to it. You know, I was like, whoa, that's weird.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
I remember when it came on, and I remember seeing you guys' video, and I was like, well, who did that video? Of course, the first thing that went to my mind was that video is better than ours. Who did that video? Oh. And it was like somebody said the guy's name, and I was like, and like I'm supposed to know, and I'm like, yeah, we should have got that guy. It's like I don't know if I can do who the guy was.
Well, who did the Hollywood video?
A French guy named. I don't know if this has ever been talked about. We had a French guy named John.
I've heard some stories about this guy.
He's nuts. He was great, but what it was we shot it on a Sunday. Prior to on Saturday, some other band on some other label had paid for all the gear. So
That's
actually,
right.
the Hollywood video,
David told, yeah.
And the Hollywood video, I think, back in the day, to shoot a video, you're talking between $30,000 and $60,000. Well, a Hollywood video, I want to say off the top of my head, was about $5,000 because we used all the rented gear from the day before. They're like, "Oh, we'll just roll it over. We'll, charge it to the other company." Like, sounds great. And the house, I want to say the house that we shot it in, that was on wheels, and that was ready to be moved out to like Indio or something like that, like the next day. So it was like, no, we got to do this all now. So it all came together, and yeah. But when I saw your video, I'm like, that's cool. It's polished, because in my mind, our video, it's too dirty. It's like, whatever.
No, you want dirty. I feel like they use all these badass, this badass gear, and then they add all the dirt filters to make it.
They had Instagram dirt filters back then.
Let's go back to, I make videos sitting in this chair talking about dirty. I don't need the same camera I'm using to make this fucking podcast I use to make a rock video.
Yep.
There's
that Tease and Please video was done by Mark Rezica.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
You know that name, yeah.
That name does sound familiar, yeah.
Mark Rezica, yeah.
Yeah.
Wasted so much money. Like all day makeup chair, like ridiculous amounts of food and shit that I didn't even eat any. I'm working. I don't eat food. I'm fucking up here with lights on me and shit. So
I don't eat it until it's done. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then the tour came, and me and all the guys were excited to do that because we love the record, but the background that I had with Chris and Dave just from being an Austinite was the best. And I remember we were in like Georgia or maybe South Carolina. God, maybe you can help me with
it. Might have been Atlanta.
And the guys in Jackal came out.
Oh, that was South Carolina, I think.
Yeah. The guys in Jackal came out, and that's the first I even heard of the Jackal. Who's that? Cool.
Yeah, because we had played with them the year before, and they were a cover band, and then the next time we come out, all of a sudden they're playing originals, and it's like, well, we're going to get replaced. We're fucked.
Yeah.
And they did replace us in the J section in Geffen.
Wow. But and they blew up. It was a year later or whatever. I saw them in L.A. at like Exposure 54, and I was like, "What?"
It was huge.
The guys that I met on the Junkyard tour, it was huge, and the songs were great. So the record when it came out, of course. But anyway,
good band.
That tour was great. You mentioned Florida.
Florida was a mess. It was a good mess.
Yeah. Do you remember where we started in St. Louis? Is that right?
Yeah, we all met in St. Louis.
And
then
what was the name?
Starry Nights.
Starry Nights. That's right.
And we ended at the Omni in Oakland, I think, right? No.
No, we didn't. Tempe, Arizona. With Faster Pussycat. It was an outdoor
water place with a
water park.
wave maker. It was like you could surf in
It was a water
Tempe.
It was a water park. It was Dangerous Toys Junkyard and Faster Pussycat in Tempe, Arizona at a water park.
I remember that stage was like 60 feet fucking tall. I was like, Jesus Christ, somebody's going to get hurt up here.
It was festival. It was a good way to go out, I thought, because it was
great. Yeah.
Festival style, outside under the stars and middle of the desert. I love grown men cried that night.
Yeah,
we didn't want that to end.
I cried because that was a fun tour. I mean,
it was super
I figured
fun.
It's like, is there ever going to be another tour better than that? And there honestly wasn't. I mean,
that's the only time that I've ever seen Chris Gates cry.
I believe it.
Yeah, but it was happy. It was happy tears.
It was happy tears.
Man, this was so. It's like everybody was so kind and giving to each other, and we didn't get on each other's nerves at all, and we just kind of kept to our own. And then during the day, it was just a bunch of just guys hanging out, and it was easy. It was really easy, and it was clean, and nobody got anybody into any trouble except for one night. One night.
Oh, well, you got to tell us.
We stayed at the same hotel together.
Was there a certain height issue about somebody jumping?
Maybe.
I think it might have been me and you.
Of course it was in Florida. No, I think it was it was Danny. Danny liked to drink. My guitar player at the time.
Yes,
Danny, he liked to drink, and he was hanging out with you guys who liked to drink a lot. And I think that just what it's typical shit like pool furniture in the in the pool. Well, it's pool furniture. It goes in the pool. Things happen. Oh, it fell. I don't know.
It's a Motel 6. It can't cost that much.
No, I'm not drunk. I'm on medication. I don't know. Whatever excuse works, right? But my tour manager said, I don't think that we need to be staying at the same hotel with Junkyard. So it was like
we did separate for a bit.
Yeah, we kind of. Well, I feel like it might have. Maybe that's why it was so fun and great because it was.
Also, Danny got sick. Danny got the flu, and at that point, it was like, no, we definitely need to separate. We can't have infestation of flu going on between camps.
Right, and that happens on the road sometime. And our tour managers were smart enough to make sure that what you said about spread.
That was a fun tour. I mean, you would think about like in 1992 bands, like us touring together, you would think it would be an egotistical nightmare. It was the total opposite. It was
September 89. September 89.
Yeah.
I didn't care where we were going to play. I was just happy that we were going to be doing Junkyard. Do you remember in St. Pete, me and David, and I think I thought it was maybe one of my guys got tattooed. We played.
Yeah, I got that. I got the middle part of the spade.
I got this this sort of, I call it the Lowenbrow. It's the Griffin. See the Griffin?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I got that in St. Pete on the Junkyard tour.
You must have went first because by the time I went, I told the guy I wanted like Mickey Mouse and all that stuff, and he gave me 2 fucking weird bolts. I think I was the last guy to go.
Well, it's pretty. It means something when you can do a little run together and have it get a tattoo. It kind of it's like going to the army together. We're gonna go get tattooed,
Boy, yeah, definitely. It was that tour was kind of at points. It was kind of like being in the army, getting up early.
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know. I remember just being excited about the St. Louis show was fun.
Yeah.
But then there's a few of them that I don't remember much of. Maybe because it was just too much travel, so I was just tired.
There was a lot of back-to-back, and I don't think we had a lot of days off. I think it was like 6 days on, 1 day off, 6 days on, 1 day off.
You were in Florida for like a week.
God, we were in Florida. It seemed like a year or something like that. My God, it was a long time. It was like, when are we ever leaving?
But I think we did like 8 shows in Florida. It was like,
I would say, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. Good times, man. Good times.
Yeah, that was fun.
Did we play Sweeney's in Tampa? Does that sound familiar to you?
That does sound,
air conditioner didn't work. Air conditioner did.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Yeah, I have a picture from that show, and it just looks like somebody, poured a bucket of water on me.
You just won the Super Bowl.
It's probably the first song. It's the first song, and I'm just like everything's stuck to me. Just like wet.
The whole crowd is drenched. Everybody on the sides is just drenched.
Yeah, no AC. Oh, we're still gonna have a show. No AC. I'm like, uh-oh.
Promoter's like, it ain't that hot. I was like, fuck you.
Well, they live there. It's like I'm from Texas. Right. I'm used to this kind of heat, so whatever. Humidity more than anyway. Yeah, as I could go on and on. It was such a blast, and
that was fun. Yeah,
good time. Too bad there was no one there to document it.
No, actually, there's a good thing. So, because certain,
maybe there was some
I like to say there was a good thing about that. I'm glad these things weren't around back then.
Yeah, well, that's probably true. It would be quite embarrassing, probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very.
It happened. Yeah. I was just talking about the original guitar player in my old band, D Cry, talking about the tours that we went on in like 1982 and 83, and he brought up a couple things. I'm like, yeah, we shouldn't be talking about that right now. It's like, yeah, these things are bugged. Fuck that shit. There's an algorithm. I'm going to jail. Fuck.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it's kids. You're still kind of a kid. When you're totally. When you're 20, 18, 19, 20, even that was shit. And dude, in 89, I think I was 22, 23.
Yeah.
I was like 21. Imagine being our age and having a tour manager, and then you have handlers. The first thing you're going to want to do is, fuck you, handler, I'm out of here, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't sound, it sounds like the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah.
That you're going to do things that you regret.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And on the outside, everyone's all jealous and like, oh man, that's
of course, yeah,
great.
Like, oh, wow.
Or you're winning all these awards that they're just the invisible awards of what it is that you're doing, but there's trouble. There's trouble afoot. Yeah.
Pat, I have to ask you the story. You've told it 100 times to me and probably others, but for people that are listening to the podcast and just tuning in to Junkyard and maybe don't know the history, there was a time when you guys went out on your first tour and the opening band was the Black Crowes. And during the tour, the Crowes started to explode. So, and there was a great story that I don't know if it was you or David told me. You were in San Francisco and James Hetfield showed up. Does this ring a bell?
That was Roach. That was Roach telling that story. I heard he showed up, but at that point I was somewhere else. But
we were at the Stone it was Dangerous Toys Junkyard at the Stone, and that was September '89.
Yeah.
And
the Black Crowes tour was 6s, 7s, and 9s.
Yeah, that's different. So
that was 91.
James and Kirk showed up at the James and Kirk Hammett showed up at the Stone in San Francisco.
Wait, the Crowes tour was on 6s, 7s, and 9s?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
I'm sorry. That was pre 6, 7, 9. The Crowes tour was very late 1990.
Oh.
It was. I want to say we had finalized all the 6, 7, 9 songs, and we got a call from the label, and the label was like, "Hey, Rick Rubin wants to put this band out on the road, and we figured, put him out with Junkyard, and it's the most logical thing." So we got wind of it. We're like, "We're going on the road." It's like we're in the middle of writing and shit like that, and they're like, "No, this is good for you guys. Go out there." We're like, "Well, of course it's good because we get a per diem, we make money." Yeah. So we hit the road. I want to say it was the first show, It was the first time the Crowes played LA, and they were playing a Cat House, and we went down there, and we didn't know who the Black Crowes were. We figured Rick Rubin, well, this was going to be a fucking metal band, and we walk in, and it's like, oh, that's Steve Marriott. This ain't no metal band. We're playing with these guys. This is fucking cool.
Yeah, man.
But and that was the first time we ever saw him. But the Hetfield thing, that was on our tour, Jason.
Yeah, that was in '89.
I remember that.
That was James and Kirk.
I think the story David tells is it's on the Black Crowes tour, and the Black Crowes are rising up during the tour, and Baker told me the story too because he was there, and Baker's like, and Hetfield shows up, and Baker's like, oh, we're still happening. Hetfield came again, and Roach goes, he's not here to see us, you motherfucker. He's here to see the Black Crowes.
That's the punchline I was looking for.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Like, yeah, James Hetfield is here. He's not here to see you.
I saw that show. At the back room here in Austin. The Black Crowes opening for Junkyard. Yeah, that was great. Those
guys were on fire. They were so fucking good. Not to say that they're not good now, but I mean, geez, it's just the original 5 guys. Oh fuck, it was really fucking cool to open up for them and see. I have no bitterness towards them because it's whatever. It ain't a competition, Right. But just watching that whole thing. Oh,
sure. You could say the same story about Metallica opening for Raven, their favorite new wave of British heavy metal band. And then a year later, a couple of years, by '86, Metallica never opened for anyone ever.
Guns N' Roses on the Permanent Vacation tour.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. They were like pretty happening, but then... And there people leaving during Aerosmith's set.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Which probably hadn't happened to Aerosmith in a long time.
No.
Well, that's like a giant knife cutting air. That's like, what? It's like, wow. You can see this spread of like fog or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty crazy. Anyway, that backroom show with Crowes and Junkyard was really
great.
Fun. Chris Robinson came up to me because he wanted to, he was telling me hi from Heidi, who made his pants and my pants.
Oh, Heidi Richmond.
Yeah,
Heidi Richmond.
Yeah, of course. And so I
You made my pants for
okay.
the 6 to 7 9 video, like a
Perfect.
drummer needs pants. It's like $500. What the fuck?
Yeah,
I took them.
yeah, sure.
No, she was great. I was Heidi.
Yeah, good time.
I took the pants and I sold them.
Pants.
That's so I can pay my gas bill.
Hey, reality sucks, you know.
Fuck yeah. In 1991, when you get, or 90, it was 93. I'm like, everything is, I'm having a fire sale. It's all going out the door. I got a big tax bill.
That's my record collection, my OG record collection. I was so hungry. I sold my record collection to my next door neighbor so I could eat.
Yeah.
Terrible choice. I should have just gone on a diet.
Yeah.
Can't get any skinnier, Jason.
Well, I'll take that as a compliment.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, Tim and Pat, we appreciate you being here for today and sharing your stories with us. And most importantly, we're looking forward to you being on this upcoming tour, playing the first album in its entirety. Chris Gates is out for a few dates. You've got an album in the works. I hope we see that sooner than later. The songs I've heard are great. They're right there in the Junkyard canon. So looking forward to another album to add to the collection. And yeah, man, just thanks for being here. And I hope to see you. I will see you in Texas.
You will. Yeah.
And always fun reuniting with you guys and hanging out in person.
Thanks, I'm honored to be on the show. I've been wanting to be on for a long time.
This is great. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank both of you guys. Thanks you, Jason.
For
Thank
having
you, Dave.
us. And if you're all out there, come out to the shows. We'd love to see everybody. So it's been a minute. So.
Absolutely. And sorry it's taken so long to get you on, but
God damn
it. All right.
All
I'm
right.
gonna get you back. I'm gonna get you that hat with that logo on it.
I'm gonna be barred at the door of your gig. We're not going on if Glessner shows up.
No, you're gonna have to work.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. On behalf of my co-host Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave Glessner, along with our special guest today, Patrick Muzingo and Tim Mosher from Junkyard.